Hi everyone, so for my topic, I chose to do how the Freudian theory relates to The Great Gatsby and Hamlet. So the first topic I'm going to be talking about is the id, ego, and superego. So the id is our unconscious thoughts that control our impulses and desires. It's basically how we are as an infant, how you cry when you need anything, and how it's purely just our desires. Then the ego is the self in the conscious world determining what is right or wrong in reality, and the superego controls its impulses and follows the rules of society. So I thought the picture that I included here was a good way to demonstrate it. It's kind of like having a devil and an angel on each of your shoulders, and then you in the middle as the ego. So the id would be the devil and the superego would be the angel. So how does this relate to Hamlet? Basically, Hamlet's id, ego, and superego are in a constant moral battle that leads to his insanity. The id is the impulsive, greedy side of him that spontaneously kills Polonius, while the superego is the moral compass making him a person of thought and no action. The ego is acting as a referee trying to help Hamlet come to rational decisions, but it's just leading to anxiety and insanity. And you can see from the quotes here when he just spontaneously kills Polonius, and then when he has a chance to kill Claudius, but he can't stop thinking about will he go to heaven or will he not. That's the battle between his id, ego, and superego. Next, this concept relates to the Great Gatsby in the way that Gatsby's id, ego, and superego are in conflict, leading to him living a delusional life and a past made of lies. Gatsby's greedy id wants Daisy all to himself in an unrealistic way. He realizes this is unrealistic and compensates by lying about the past. Not only does he lie about him and Daisy being in love for 5 years, when in reality they only dated for a month, but he also lies about his background so nobody knows that his wealth comes from a dangerous place and that he was born poor. And you can see from the quotes saying that Gatsby and Daisy had been in love for 5 years and that she never loved Tom, and she later corrects him and says it wouldn't be true if she said that she never loved Tom. The next Freudian theory I'll be talking about is arrested development. It's another large element in Freud's theories. It's essentially being emotionally incapable of growing up. And if you look at the picture I have there with the little boy inside of the man's head, that's a pretty accurate description of how it is, where you just can't grow up on the inside. It usually comes from a place of childhood trauma, and people who develop arrested development are immature and have a hard time dealing with adult situations. Arrested development is seen in Hamlet and his childish ways of life. His taunting wordplay, still being in university at 30, his inability to grieve, his attachment to his mother, and his rude behavior towards Ophelia are all examples of arrested development. We can see this with the quote where he tells her to go to a nunnery, and a normal adult would not behave this way towards an ex-girlfriend, and it just shows that he can't grow up and deal with adult situations maturely. Freud's theories on arrested development are applied to the Great Gatsby in the way that Gatsby copes with Daisy moving on. Instead of trying to find someone new, he becomes a bootlegger in organized crime. He does this to get rich and throws weekly parties in hopes that Daisy will show up. A normal person would try to get back in contact by maybe sending a message, not obsessing over a green light across the bay. You can see this in the quotes where he immediately stops his parties after Daisy says that she doesn't like it. Gatsby's reaction to Daisy disliking his party emphasizes his immaturity. A normal adult would not throw weekly parties to begin with, but they also would not stop just because one person didn't have a good time. Overall, Gatsby is very immature and deals with his emotions in childish ways. The final concept I'll be talking about is the Oedipus complex. This is Freud's most controversial theory. The theory essentially states that at one point or another, all children unconsciously want to sleep with the parent of the opposite sex, therefore creating a rivalry with the other parent. According to Freud, this is a crucial part of childhood development. This is named after Oedipus, who unknowingly killed his father and slept with his mother, which shows the rivalry with the parent and the attraction to the other. Now, how does the Oedipus complex relate to Hamlet? It's seen in Hamlet's obsession with his mother and her sex life, which he brings up over and over again. Hamlet talks about Gertrude sleeping with Claudius way more than any normal person would want to talk or think about their parents having sex. Children are supposed to grow out of this phase, but Hamlet is 30 and still indulges in this unconscious desire. The Oedipus complex in The Great Gatsby is explored in a bit of a different way. It's seen in Gatsby's obsession with Daisy, and it connects to the Oedipus complex because they're both grasping for situations where it's impossible for them to be with someone. With children and their mothers, they long for the past when they were young and all of their mother's attention was on them, in the same way that Gatsby craves the past that he had with Daisy. In the quote, you can see Nick saying, "You can't repeat the past," and he says, "Why, of course you can," followed by a little bit later he says, "I'm going to fix it just the way it was before." This proves that he wants to be with Daisy in the same way that children want to be with their mothers. You can furthermore see that Gatsby almost sees Daisy as a mother figure because of the way he reacts when he sees her with her child. It seems unnatural to him, as if all of the attention should be on him. Another aspect that relates to the Oedipus complex is Gatsby's rivalry with Tom. It's the same as the rivalry that children have with the parents as the same sex as them because they want the other parent's attention and love all to themselves. To conclude, we can see the Freudian theory very prominent in Hamlet, where we can see Hamlet's struggles directly related to the Oedipus complex, arrested development, and the id, ego, and superego. Whereas in Hamlet, the Freudian theory is evident, but it's more of a cause and effect based on a circumstantial childhood that has not been touched on in the text. The id, ego, and superego conflict is very prominent, where the other elements are less explored in the text. Thank you for listening to my presentation on how the Freudian theories of the id, ego, and superego, arrested development, and Oedipus complex relate to both Hamlet and The Great Gatsby.